guys, good morning. Brian here. It is a couple days before Thanksgiving. I've had the whole week off and I'm feeling great. If you're watching, happy pre-Thanksgiving. I've got some great news. I ended up tuning the Mustang. I went with the tuner, dropped the hammer on some software, and I'm gonna go over which tuner I went with and why, how the tune is and my initial reaction. I'm gonna run out for some errands and we're gonna go over it. It's pretty sweet. So as you can see, I went with the Cobb software for my Ecoboost, and I purchased it off of eBay, actually, used for about 350 bucks, so that's roughly like 150 bucks cheaper than a brand new Accessport. The guy I bought it from, I guess he just was done with his Ecoboost because he included the Accessport, the OBD2 cable, these sweet Mustang shoulder straps or seatbelt pads. So I'm guessing he must have just been getting rid of his Ecoboost altogether and was just trying to get rid of some of the extra aftermarket stuff he purchased. So I dropped the hammer on it. I was a little weary because it was eBay, it was used, you know, a bunch of things could have gone wrong. Like, he may not have unmated it from his car, it may have been faulty, I didn't really know, but he got like 100% positive feedback, so I said the heck with it, dropped the hammer on it. It got shipped to me relatively quickly, and I purchased it. It got here, I quickly mated the Accessport to my car like right after work, and it literally took me like 20 minutes. You know, I was a little apprehensive because I've never actually tuned my own car. Like when I had my GTI, you know, I had Unitronic on my Mark 6, and the Mark 5 before that I had APR, and that all required me to actually go to a shop and they handled all that. So I was a little apprehensive, but it was a pretty quick process. So I got the tune all set up in like 20 to 30 minutes. Couldn't really drive it because it had been raining, but you know, it successfully mated it. All the features that are in here include, so you have your gauges, wave all identifies the Accessport. You know, it measures like your boost pressure, your estimated torque, it can do all that. And then you can go down here, you can measure the 0 to 60 quarter mile. Obviously, you can diagnose and troubleshoot. You can scan for codes. You can use this for cars that are not mated to the Accessport as well. So I can use this for my Wrangler, which is pretty cool. This is all your tuning stuff. So you have like, looks like I'm giving the peace sign in the reflection. I'm just holding my phone like that because I've got this weird case. But so you can do like, you can change the maps. So you can scan through all those. I'm not going to go through that right now. You can restore it to stock. You can have it show the current map, and then up here under adjustments, it has a bunch of goodies. Wait till I so you know, you can enable two-step, you can do a bump delay, you can enable traction control, the trans brake two-step, which is all pretty cool. I'll put a video on later of like the two-step. I won't do it in this video, but yeah, that's basically it. At first I didn't really see the appeal, but once I actually had it, actually having access to all this like on the fly is pretty cool. Some of it's useless, like obviously my car has you know, the 0 to 60 timer built in. I have a boost gauge right here because it's the performance premium package, but still, like, it's pretty cool. So, you know, the tune will always be on here regardless of whether or not you have the Accessport plug-in, but the extras like the two-step, the bump delay, all that, you have to actually have the Accessport plugged in, I believe. So that's basically that. We're going to go for a quick drive, and I'll just give you my initial reactions and whatnot.
All right, Alright, so as you know by now, I went with the Cobb Accessport. It was between that and the Ford performance software, recalibration, whatever software you want to call it. Ended up going with the Cobb tune. I was already leaning towards Cobb, but the fact that I found used software, I just decided to go with that. Obviously, the Ford performance tune had the perks of maintaining your warranty as long as it was installed by a Ford dealer or a ASE or CC, whatever, certified mechanic, but I just decided to go with this. The performance tune, from what I heard, gives you a little bit of jump on it and a little more power, and you definitely feel it, but I heard, like Cobb, you can't really go wrong with it. And I stuck with Cobb or the performance tune mostly because, obviously, Ford, the Ecoboost, the 2.3 at least, Ecoboost engine, you know, has been known to explode. Obviously, they're very anecdotal, isolated, but usually the root cause of them, however frequent or infrequent they were, was the car had been modified. So I wanted to go with a conservative tune. So it was between Cobb and Ford Performance. And I ended up going with Cobb, like I said, because I found a used Accessport with the software, so went with that. Moving on, so my initial impressions. Obviously, when I installed the tune, it was after work. It was like 5 o'clock at night. It was dark. It was raining. So I definitely was not going to be able to really test its limits. The next day, when I actually took the car for a drive, I instantaneously noticed a difference. There was the throttle response, obviously, was much different, which is what usually the first thing you hear from people when they tune a car is the throttle response is more responsive. It also didn't feel like it almost felt like a diesel stock. It had get up and go, but it just kind of like it was very linear. It wasn't very like aggressive. After the tune, noticed that it was much more torquey. It just seemed to like pull and pull and pull and never really let up. Obviously, it has like a very small turbo. I guess it's like the equivalent to the KO3 in the GTI, the stock turbo that comes in the Volkswagens. So what usually happens when you're stock is gives you a lot of torque in the low end, but as you get up to like 5,000, 6,000 RPMs, it starts running out of breath, especially at high speeds. But now with this tune, it just seems like it just kind of pulls, and I don't notice that drop off, or at least it's not as abrupt. So right there, you know, I noticed the throttle response, the power was very apparent, and the aggressiveness. Like I was like, my tires were chirping through second gear. Also, I noticed now that on my dash, I can't show it. I'll try and pull it up later, but it just has the gearing on the automatic always on the screen on the infotainment center. It just shows me, you know, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth all the time. Whereas before it was only when I was in sport mode or when I was using the paddle shifters. Next thing that was probably the icing on the cake was the tangible evidence that the tune did make the car faster. Obviously, it felt faster, but you know, people's butt dynos always can fool them into thinking that. But just to be objective, did a 0 to 60 stock. The best 0 to 60 time I was able to get, according to my acceleration timer built into the car, was 6 seconds flat. That was the best 0 to 60 I could get stock. And after the tune, I noticed when I did a 0 to 60, my first 0 to 60 was about 5.7, which still wasn't great. Or no, 5.6, my mistake. It was 5.6. After a few more runs, I was able to knock it down to 5.4. It should be noted that this is the Ecoboost with the performance package and the performance premium package, so it has the bigger brakes. It also has a different, the limited slip differential is geared a little bit differently on this model than the other Ecoboosts, and apparently that makes it a little bit slower in the 0 to 60 time. So 5.6 is not that bad, all things considered. There's a Japolinik or whatever did an article about how the people thought the Ecoboost was getting slower when really it was just the limited slip tries to hold the gearing a little bit long, or it shifts earlier. That's what it is. It shifts earlier on the Performance Plus package. with the limited slip differential they have because it's gear different. So instead of like right before it gets to 60, it upshifts, and I don't know what they were thinking, but that knocks off a little bit of, I guess, like 0.3 seconds of the 0 to 60 time, because you know they said you could get like a 5.7 according to Car and Driver, and the best I could get was a 6-second flat with the automatic. But regardless, you know, my 0 to 60 was knocked off by, what is that, about 0.6 seconds. So that was the other thing I noticed. And that's really it as far as my initial impression. It felt like, it really felt like, let me get around this guy. It felt like the car just completely woke up. And ultimately, I think, in my opinion, I think it was ultimately how the car should have been out of the factory. Obviously, I know, you know, they couldn't make, Jesus, everyone's driving like a grandpa today. They couldn't make the Ecoboost any faster without it starting to compete with the Mustang GT, because it would go into the GT territory regarding power. But regardless, I think that not just the power, but the responsiveness, especially in the automatic. Actually, I'll do a quick pull right here. It's so much. It's pull. I'm already up to like 90 miles an hour, going from 30. It just pulls, and it feels, the engine is just completely woken up. It just pulls, it doesn't let up, and it just puts a smile on my face every time I try it. So it's how this car should have been from the factory. You can argue all you want about it. You know, obviously I understand, like, Ford had to do what it did so it didn't compete with the GT, but it's just a totally different car, and I just love it. But that's really my initial impression. I love it. Cobb did a really good job on the software for this. I was not surprised, since they're so engulfed in Subaru, and then over the past couple years they also got into the Ford game as well as the Volkswagen game. They did a really good job giving like a decent off-the-shelf tune that gave me just what I wanted, which is just a little bit more power and a little more responsiveness. And obviously the off-the-shelf tunes are not like power monsters from Cobb. Obviously, you can get it Pro Tune to get a little more out of it. I don't know if I'm actually going to go that route. I'm saying right now I'm just going to stick with the Stage 1 93 tune that I have logged onto the ECU. But, you know, things can change over time, and, you know, eventually you start to get comfortable with your power and you crave more. So I could be wrong, but as it stands, I'm going to stay with the Stage 1 93 off-the-shelf tune. I'm more than content. I just have the off-the-shelf tune, the resonator delete, and those are the only mods I'm doing. I may put in like a cold air intake just for the hell of it, but beyond that, I'm more than content with this car. Cobb did a great job. I love the Accessport, and it's definitely like refreshing to know that I got like a really good deal on it. I took a risk, bought something used on eBay, saved a butt ton of money, and it paid off. But that's about it. If I don't talk to you guys in the next couple weeks, enjoy your Thanksgiving. I'll try and come out with another video around Christmas time. I have the rest of the week off for Thanksgiving, and then I jump right back into the trenches at work until Christmas, and then I'm on another break. But that's about it. I will talk to you guys later. Peace.